This is the Louie T Network.
Louie T Live. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to another edition of In the Draft Room Live with Mark. Yours truly, Louie T. Thank you for joining me here on episode number 2 as we continue to mosey our way on to the 2017 NFL Draft. We are 1 day away, or should I say 2 days away from April, and then the end of the month we will be at the 2017 NFL Draft. And yes, I had someone ask me, I believe it was my man not BE, it was my man Ree, who asked me, was I going to do the draft party this year? You damn right I'm doing the draft party, and I will put a promo out for that in the coming weeks along with my mock draft. And so all of those things are coming down the pipeline, so keep your eyes peeled for that as well. Got a number of topics to get to tonight. Among them, a lot of quarterback pro days taking place over the last 2 weeks. We'll talk about them, comb through them. What did we learn about these quarterbacks? Who was impressive? Who wasn't? We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the program. Also, what to do with the curious case of Teez Tabor. We talked about that on episode 1. He needed to have a strong pro day. He needed to run fast. Well, he didn't. We'll talk about that here in a second. Also, we talked about Mike Williams, and he was hiding from us. He was not as fast, and he reminded us of Laquan Treadwell from last year. Hey, you're not going to run fast. It's okay. I'm here to apologize. We'll get to that a little bit later on. Jourdan Lewis, Michigan cornerback. Could we be having another assault charge here with a guy not being able to keep his hands off of a female? We'll talk about that a little bit later on and what that may do to his draft stock. Again, innocent until proven guilty. Keep that in your minds, people. But we'll talk about that a little bit later on, and then we'll get to the main topic of discussion tonight, the running back position. All of that and more tonight on the show. So let's jump into some of the topics of discussion for me early on. And I want to start with a my bad, okay? And look, I tell you all the time, when I'm right, you're going to know I'm right because I'm going to tell you I'm right. Who doesn't like to be right? It's one of my favorite things in the world, to be right. But when I'm wrong, I will be the first to tell you I'm wrong. I made a mistake. I made a boo-boo. And Mike Williams shut me up with his pro day. Went out and ran about a 4.5 flat. You hear the 4.48s and the 4.49s. He probably ran more along the lines of a 4.5 flat. Either way, that's way faster than I thought. I can't speak for anybody out there. It's way faster than what I was giving him credit for. I never thought he would run that fast. And so I thought we were talking 4.58, 4.59, 4.6, something in there. And he ran a 4.5 flat. Probably can get up to as fast as a 4.48 on a game day. I've seen him run by guys in the ACC, but I really didn't know what that meant. So good to see him go out and run well because this guy's a really good athlete. He can jump. He can high point the football. He was a big target for Deshaun Watson and the Clemson Tigers on their way to a national championship. He was one of the biggest difference makers in that game late when they needed to make plays. He made them. And so for him to go out and go get that kind of time in a draft where it's not that receiver heavy, and we're not talking about a lot of guys that have size and a combination of speed, that really helped his draft stock immensely. And so I apologize. I'm sorry. Michael, I'm sorry. Congratulations on your great 40 time at your pro day. That's going to definitely help him come off the board in the first round. I think he was going to come off the board in the first round anyway. I think that pretty much solidified his status as a first-round wide receiver in the 2017 NFL Draft. What to do with the curious case of Teez Tabor? We talked about Teez Tabor last week or 2 weeks ago on this very program, and I talked about how he needed to have a strong pro day after going out and running extremely slow at the combine. He ran it's like a 4.62 and a 4.65 at the combine, and so Those were less than stellar times. Not the first time we've seen a Florida cornerback go out and disappoint at the combine. Remember, this is why you run at the combine. Okay, this is why I'm a big proponent of going out, running at the combine, because you can always go and clean it up at your pro day. And remember, once upon a time, Joe Hayden struggled at the combine, then went and lit it up at the Florida Pro Day. All was forgiven. He was a first-round corner. The rest is history. So I thought maybe Teez Tabor, and we all knew he wasn't very fast, but we said, hey, look, man, if you could just get it sub 4.6, we'll all take that and we'll move on our way. And what we got was, wow, what we got was something I'd say a little disappointing, to say the least. A 4.75 was the best that he could do at his pro day. And wow, I mean, that's a whole nother tenth of a second slower. I mean, that's unreal. And so, wow, I honestly don't know what to do with that, because when you watch the tape, you don't see 4.75, and maybe he just doesn't test well. But you see a guy that can play the cornerback position. And look, I tell you this all the time. Don't always take speed and make that the end-all, be-all. So football is played on the field. It's not played in shorts and a T-shirt or just shorts in general. Some guys like to go out there and run with no shirt on. Whatever the case may be, it's played with pads on. And a lot of times with these corners, we talk about these measurables. We talk about their speed and all of this stuff. But the better corners in the league, your Josh Normans, your Richard Shermans, these guys didn't go at the combine and run a 4.4 or anything. Some of them didn't even run a 4.5 anything. They're in the 4.6s. So, look, bottom line, what I'm trying to kind of convey to you is that, look, I don't know if you can convince a team to spend a first-round pick on a guy that runs a 4.75, okay? I get it. I understand that. Totally. But don't think for 1 second that he's not a good football player because he's slow. All right, the two don't go together, all right? There's not a direct correlation there. Can you spend a first-round pick on a guy that runs a 4.75? I don't know if I would be willing to do that. But I'll tell you one thing, I'd spend a second-round pick on his ass in a hurry. So he's a football player. Say what you want about his lack of speed. That's evident. Bottom line is the guy's a football player. And so I'll vouch for him as a second-round pick. I don't know if I can pull the trigger on a 4.7 guy in the first round. And he ran a 4.6 before, so he's capable of running a 4.6. But bottom line is, I don't know if I'm willing to pull the trigger on a 4.6 corner, 4.7 corner in the first round. I told you I was a Quincy Wilson guy going in anyway. So to me, this just solidifies Teez Tabor for me as a second-round corner. I just don't see anyone pulling the trigger on a 4.7 guy in the first round. I just don't. There are too many corners. And you know what could help him, though? What could be the final end-all, be-all, making him and pushing him over that first-round threshold is the fact that Sidney Jones, blew out his Achilles. And now that opens up a cornerback space potentially in the first round, where maybe a team that would have not had to reach for a corner in the first round may think, okay, well, maybe I need to get mine now because Sidney Jones is down and he's not going to be able to play in his rookie season. So I don't know if that has anything to do with the thought process of teams around the league. But one thing's for sure, I think Teez Tabor has pretty much put himself in a position where I do not see him hearing his name called day one of the NFL draft. Jourdan Lewis, cornerback out of Michigan, highly touted prospect, the guy that is very talented, that we think is a first day, second day type of corner. I don't think he's a first round pick, but I think he could easily go in the second round. Probably will go in the second round. You hate to hear anything with domestic abuse or violence, because you know how the NFL has really cracked down on that now, and really we feel like the NFL and Roger Goodell and all those guys are hypocrites when it comes to domestic violence, and trying to clean up the game and all of that nonsense, trying to legislate stuff that they really don't have any jurisdiction to legislate. But in any event, without question, this is a really sticky and dicey subject. I mean, we saw Ezekiel Elliott go through something similar last year with his girlfriend at the time, or ex-girlfriend, who tried to allege that he did this, did that. And it's still an ongoing investigation. And then you see the nonsense that he did on the boat for St. Patrick's Day, and you're thinking to yourself, this guy's not wrapped too tight. Jourdan Lewis here, girlfriend alleging that this guy dragged her by her hair across a driveway or something of that sort. And again, innocent until proven guilty. He's denying all claims. She's saying otherwise. It's messy. You don't want this kind of negative publicity before the draft. It scares teams away. They don't want this hanging over their head. They don't want a situation where maybe it comes to light that he did, in fact, do this, and now the league is going to intervene. We've seen them be very clumsy in their handling of situations similar to this. You know how society is. We like to just hang guys out to dry when we hear something like this without giving them the benefit of the doubt. I'm not getting into it. I don't know Jourdan Lewis. I can't vouch for him. All I know is that this is just a situation you don't want to find yourself in less than a month out from the NFL draft. That is for certain. Hopefully all of that stuff clears up and he's able to hear his name called relatively early in the 2017 NFL draft. Let's talk about the quarterbacks. Remember, we did this in episode 1, and I quickly want to go back to talk about the quarterbacks quickly, because we had a lot of quarterback pro days over the last 2 weeks, and some guys helped themselves. Some guys kind of made the waters a little murky for them. And so I want to kind of talk about these quarterbacks quickly before we move on to talk about the running back position and get to a few of your comments and talk to you guys about the running back position. I had a chance to look at them over the last couple of weeks, and then I feel a certain way about that position now, and I feel like we can kind of put these backs into little groups. And I want to talk and get your perspective on some of these running backs. I've put out some back videos this week. Going to do the receivers next week, and so I told you we were about to turn it up, and so we're going to start moseying on and really pushing through a lot of these different positions as we get closer and closer to the NFL draft. Last week we had the pro days of Mitchell Trubisky and Deshaun Kaiser. The week previous, Deshaun Watson had his pro day. And we'll start with Watson since his was a little further out. Mixed reviews. I was actually really disappointed in the outcome of his pro day. Look, we know that pro days aren't the deciding factor in where a guy's going to be drafted. It's just another chance for evaluators, scouts, general managers, coaches, owners, anyone who wants to be involved with this process to check off some more boxes. You want to see a guy live. You want to see his arm. You want to see him be accurate. Look, this stuff is scripted. You've went over this time and time again. This is your environment. You're at your school. You're with your receivers. The timing should be there. There should be no F-ups, okay? I shouldn't hear about a guy incompleting 8 passes at his pro day out of 65 throws. You know these throws. You've practiced them over and over again. You should miss 2, maybe 3 at the most throws. The ball shouldn't be hitting the ground very often because this is your pro day. You scripted this. You set this up with your throwing coach. You know exactly what's going to happen because you set it up. You're throwing with your guys, so timing should not be an issue. So when I hear Deshaun Watson had a mixed day and that the ball hit the ground 8 to 10 times, that's a problem. He should be out there crisp. And remember, the last time we had a suspect pro day, it was Teddy Bridgewater, and he still went in the first round, but it was the very last pick. Remember, the Vikings traded back into the first round to get Teddy B. So could this be a situation where Deshaun Watson's stock drops a bit because of that pro day? Maybe some teams walked away saying that was a little uneven. I'm not really sure if this guy deserves to be a first-round pick or not, or at least an early first-round pick. If you ask me, he's still going to be a first-round pick. I don't think it's going to crush him, but if there were some doubts, if you were on the fence and you went to that pro day, well, now you're saying, nope, we're not going to do it. And if you already went into the pro day thinking that this was the guy, maybe you say, okay, maybe we need to go back and do a little bit more homework, but I don't think the pro day is going to change your mind. It wasn't horrible, right? It wasn't Teddy Bridgewater bad. It wasn't what you were expecting for a guy that, again, you scripted this, you set it up. It was a little uneven by most accounts. Let's move on to DeShone Kizer, a guy that a lot of teams like. A lot of people think is going to be the first quarterback off the board. If you ask me, has the most upside of all of these quarterbacks: size, arm strength, a little bit of mobility to match. I think he's a guy that a lot of people feel like you put in the right system, given an opportunity to learn, he could be a big-time NFL quarterback. I tend to agree with that, but I was very disappointed with his performance at the Combine. But then he goes and lights it up at his pro day. Everyone came away from his pro day blown away by his performance. And so now I think his stock is now all of a sudden on the rise. And that's good because I think, like I said, this is a guy that can get it done if put in a system and given an opportunity. I really think he helped himself immensely at the pro day, and he needed to because I thought the Combine, much like Deshaun Watson's pro day, was very uneven, and you left kind of asking yourself questions about DeShone Kizer. And I think he may have dispelled some of those things with his pro day. Again, you need to go out and kill your pro day because you set it up. It's scripted. You know what's coming. You're throwing to your guys. You're in your environment. You got a good night's rest before it. There should be no excuses as to why your pro day isn't flawless. And so it was good to hear that Kizer went out and did what he needed to do. You go to Mitchell Trubisky, same thing with him. I thought he was out. I actually watched a little bit of his pro day on the television. So I was really pleased with what I saw with him. He looked really comfortable. I was really impressed with his release. It was very quick. It was fluid. His footwork even looked better. So did Kizer. I actually saw some clips of his pro day. Footwork looked so much better than it did at the Combine. So you can tell these guys are working out the kinks of not being under center in college, and still a process. It's going to take time, but it's good to know that they're a quick study and that they can take what they've been working on and bring it to the field. Now, again, it's one thing to do it when you're in a controlled environment and there's no one coming after you. It's a totally different thing when you got guys trying to tear your head off. Are you going to remember the things, that muscle memory, is it going to kick in? And are you going to do the things that you've been working on, or are you going to revert back to the things that you're comfortable with? Again, we can't confirm nor deny that now, but good to see these guys doing the things that they need to do to put themselves in the best position possible to be selected early in the 2017 NFL draft. And as we know, quarterbacks get pushed way up in the draft. And so while you're hearing this guy might not go to 7 and this guy might not go to 12 and this guy might not come off the board until 17, quarterback, that's the one position where guys get pushed up the draft board because of the necessity of the position. So I wouldn't be shocked if we hear some of these guys' names called a lot sooner than we expect. Hearing Davis Webb, of all people, the California quarterback, as a name that could potentially be a first-round pick. This is the stuff that you hear this time of the year. I don't expect him to come off the board. He's had some teams tell him that he's a first-round pick. They can tell him he's a first-round pick all they want. I don't think anyone's selecting Davis Webb out of Cal in the first round. That being said, I just told you that the one position that is always a wild card that gets pushed up draft boards every year because of the necessity is the quarterback position. And if those top quarterbacks, Kizer, Trubisky, Watson, come off the board quickly, and Mahomes then gets pushed up into the first round, all of a sudden now you could see a guy like Davis Webb come off the board a little bit sooner than we all expect. That's why the draft is so unpredictable, because you just never know. With that being said, though, I'm going to turn my attention to you guys because, like I said, we got an hour tonight, and I don't want to waste it me sitting here talking the entire time. I want to hear from you guys. So we're going to get to your comments. We're going to talk the running back position. We're going to talk about what we feel about these running backs. We're going to get to some of your comments. Not going to get to all of them. Okay, we're going to pick out some of these comments, see which ones pique my interest. We'll discuss some of them, and we'll talk running back. So let's talk about what's really good with you guys. This 2017 NFL draft, all the things that have happened over the last couple of weeks, and the running back position.
Let me ask you a question.
What's really good?
Only thing we really want to know right now, is what's really good. What's really good, huh? But the question for y'all, what's really good?
I have no further questions.
All right, so want to jump into some of your comments, try to get through as many as we possibly can. I will try not to be redundant. I'm going to be a lot more efficient with these comments. So we'll get through as many of them as we possibly can. My man Andrew Kim says he's loving the content so far. I'm getting them out quick. I'm trying to. I feel like I'm a little bit behind the curve this year with the whole move and everything. So I'm going to turn it up. And I told y'all, if you're following me on Instagram, I told you that I was going to turn it up this week on one of my posts. And if you're not following me on Instagram, shame on you. You should be. And if you have an IG account, you need to make that happen. But in any event, Ben Glassford says, let's see what he said. Let's see if I can get up there. You guys are commenting so fast. They're pushing up some of the comments. He said, says, worked out Malik McDowell today and apparently are infatuated with him, potentially trading back from 22 and taking him near the end of the first round. And I don't know what team he's speaking of. I can't see the text at the top. But he's a name that I'm hearing a lot in the first round. Teams, look, the whole thing is with Malik McDowell is work ethic. How much do you love football? Because his 2015 tape looks vastly different than 2016. When Michigan State was good and they were vying for a national championship, this guy was engaged and he was a beast. You can even go back as far as 2014 if you like and see this guy make his plays. But then you go to 2016 and not so much. So there's some questions about him. We'll see what happens. Captain Spartan 04 says, I've got bad news. I think my Steelers are getting Carl Larson. He looked explosive at the combine. So we'll see what happens with him as a pass rusher. There are some intriguing names at the pass rusher position in this draft. And Carl Lawson is one of them for me because I think he's very explosive. I would have loved to have seen him have more production at Auburn last year, but I still think this guy's got immense talent, and I think he can get to the quarterback. So we'll see about that. Let's see. What's going on, Ree? Billy Madden says, what are some good right guards in the second from my Vikes? It's a position I'm not going to lie to you. I haven't really taken a hard, long look at the offensive line because it's a down year for offensive linemen. Normally, we're talking about 4 or 5, upwards of 6 tackles that could potentially come off the board in the first round. We just got 2 this year, really. Maybe 3 if you want to throw Cam Robinson in there of Alabama. But Garrett Bowles of Utah and the kid out of Wisconsin. Can't think of his name. But yeah, those 2 are the 2 big tackles in this draft. And so I can't even really tell you about any guards right now, to be honest with you. But by the time we get to the end of this process, I'll be able to jump knee deep into there and talk with you about just about any position you like. Andrew Kim says, Corey Davis not testing, teams worrying about what his staff. I wanted to talk about that because Corey Davis not going to work out at his pro day. And not going to work out before the draft. And, teams want to know, what are we getting here? Because you watch his tape, you like what you see, but you don't really know how fast this guy really is. So you want to go out, you want to see how fast he is, you want to see him go run around, catch the football, and you're not going to see it. And he's not going to do it. And so now you got to go off the tape. And that sometimes that can be a scary proposition for teams because you want to know these teams, you got to remember, these teams are investing in these players. When you spend the first round picking a guy, that's a big investment that you're going to bestow upon someone. You're going to give out a lot of money. The expectations are going to be extremely high. And if you're a general manager that's on the ropes, that's on a hot seat, you can't afford to draft a guy that you haven't seen, okay? Because first-round picks get guys fired. It can get a guy a job in security, and it can get you fired. You miss on enough first-round picks, you won't have a job. So that's a really dicey situation there for Corey Davis. But this is such a weak wide receiver draft class to me. After seeing what we've seen over the last 4 or 5 years, this draft doesn't stack up with the classes we've seen, the last 3 or 4 years or so. So I think he'll still get away with not doing this and being drafted in the first round. That's just my opinion. But we'll see. First name, last name says, if you were the Jacksonville Jaguars, would you draft a quarterback within the first 2 rounds? Absolutely. Tom Coughlin is really taking over a big role in Jacksonville. And he's already said he's not a huge Blake Bortles guy. And I tend to agree with him. I was a Blake Bortles guy up until last year. I was really disappointed with his play last season. And so if I'm the Jacksonville Jaguars, you hate to do this again because you drafted a quarterback in 2010. You drafted another one in the 13 draft. You might have to do it again in 2017 draft. It's unfortunate, but you got to keep doing it. As my man Mike Mayock says, you keep doing it until you get it right. And so I think you got to go with a quarterback. And whether that's someone in the first round, and maybe you don't feel as good about a quarterback at number, I think they're at 5 again, are the Jacksonville Jaguars. Maybe you don't feel as good about someone in the top 10, but maybe you feel good about someone in the second round, whether it's a Mahomes or a Kaya or, Davis Webb, whomever. Maybe you pull the trigger in the second round on a quarterback. But I feel like the Jaguars, and it's crazy to say this about a team that doesn't win more than 5 or 6 games every year, but I feel like they got a luxury pick at number 5. They don't have to draft anything. I think they're one of those wild cards. They could trade back out of that pick if they like, if they find a suitable trade partner and they're not going back too far and they're getting good value. But they could take any player that they want because they don't really necessarily need any one thing. So I don't know. I think they're in a really good spot on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Vincent Phillips says, Joe Mixon is the best running back in the draft, but will the Redskins consider him? My guess is as good as yours. I don't think so. Not in the first round, at least. I don't know if anyone's going to pick him in the first round. I don't think any team wants the stigma of drafting Joe Mixon in the first round, but I think someone's going to take him in the second round. I really do. I think teams are sitting around saying, oh, okay, we're not messing with Joe Mixon. I heard the Patriots and the Dolphins both took him off their board. That's fine. There are going to be other teams that don't entertain Joe Mixon as a player on their board. But I'll tell you one thing, someone's going to take Joe Mixon's ass, and I think someone's going to take him in the second round and wouldn't be shocked if it's the Detroit Lions in the second round that take Joe Mixon. You heard it here first. I would not be shocked if the Detroit Lions take Joe Mixon with their second round pick, and would not shock me in the least. Rarely even, my man Reese says, have you heard of Jordan Willis from K-State? He could be the steal of the draft. Yes, you're talking about the linebacker out of K-State, a guy that can get after the quarterback, was extremely explosive at the combine. And that was the first time I really started to lay eyes on him. And the guy moved really well. I thought he did a really good job in the conversion drills where he kind of was asked to drop into coverage, and thought he was fluid. Thought he ran well all day long. He tested well. And he's a guy that can get to the quarterback. So I think he could be one of those guys that quietly, and I told you there are some intriguing names as pass rushers in this draft. Jordan Willis is one of those names in this upcoming draft. Rarely even, my man Reed says, why is no one talking about Curtis Samuel? Man is a beast. Because he's a tweener. And when you're a tweener and on a man with no position, this is what happens to you in a draft where there are players that have positions and are very good. He's a running back, wide receiver hybrid, but he's more of a running back than a receiver. So I think he kind of gets lost in the shuffle because he doesn't have a position. He was one of those athletes at Ohio State. And so because of that, I think it's kind of hurting him. He'll find a home and he'll find a good one when it's all said and done. But you're not going to hear his name as often because, again, he's not a running back. He's not a true running back. He's not a true wide receiver. He's a tweener, and those guys kind of get lost in the shuffle when we start mentioning players at specific positions. Vincent Cole says, are you good with your Skins drafting McCaffrey in the first round? I wouldn't have a problem with it, but I would not be in love with that selection either. The Redskins definitely need a running back, and if it's McCaffrey, if it's Cook, it wouldn't make me one bit of difference. I would love for the Redskins to go defense in the first round and come back and get a running back in the second round. I think there would be some value there. But if a guy that they really like is sitting there at 17, I have no problems with them taking him. And if that guy is McCaffrey, so be it. He would upgrade us at a number of positions, and he would be a mismatch for teams. But I feel like we already have that kind of back on our team. His name is Chris Thompson. I don't think we need another one of those guys, if you ask me. I need a guy that can tote the rock 20 times and be a difference maker out of the backfield. I don't necessarily know if Christian McCaffrey is that type of guy or not. My man Smoke says Nate Peterson is a sleeper. He talked to me about that on Twitter a couple days ago. And so I think Nathan Peterman is a solid quarterback. We keep hearing Kirk Cousins. He's the Kirk Cousins of this draft. Hard to project that on anybody because that would mean that this guy's got a successful NFL career ahead of him. And it's hard to project that for a guy that's probably going to be a mid-round to late-round quarterback, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, Ree, I remember the Teddy B Pro Day. We talked about that earlier. The Laughing Samoa says, how many trades do you predict for the first day of the draft? Trades are so hard to predict. I try to leave trades alone because I get them wrong every time I try to go in and insert trades into my mock draft. It usually goes awry, destroys my whole thing. But it would not shock me if there are a couple of trades. Jacksonville, for me, is the big one right now just because they don't need anything necessarily, and I think that's a hot spot if you're looking. And if let's say a guy like Jonathan Allen slides down to 5, you don't think there's some teams behind Jacksonville are like, wait a minute, this guy's probably the second best player in this draft. What is he doing sitting there on the board at 5? Don't think for one second someone won't try to come up with Jacksonville who said, look, we already took care of our defensive line already. We don't need another defensive lineman. We just went out and paid Calais Campbell. We already got Malik Jackson. We don't need any more defensive linemen. Does somebody want to come take Jonathan Allen off our hands? You don't think for one second the Jaguars won't trade out of that pick? So there's so many different scenarios that could happen on draft day. Hard to really predict as we're a month out from the draft. The Laughing Samoa says, when can we expect your 2017 mock draft video? Love your content, man. Keep it up. Probably in the next 2 weeks or so. I'm going to really sit down and kind of hammer that thing out. And I want to get it out as soon as possible, though. This draft is really sneaking up on me. So it'll be out here shortly. And I'll probably put out a promo for it before it's coming out so you guys will know and be looking for it. It won't just spring out on you guys. So we'll see. Argenis Luguardo says, hey, Louie, as a Redskin fan, how do you feel about the Eagles if they drafted Dalvin Cook? Giants took McCaffrey with the Cowboys having Zeke. That'll be very tough to stop. It would be a dangerous combination if all those players went to those respective teams and the Cowboys already having Zeke Elliott. We already don't stop the run very well. And if those teams went out and got those types of players, it would spell trouble for us for the next decade or at least the foreseeable future. That would be a scary proposition. But we'll see. You know, there's a lot of time between now and then, and we'll figure out what's going to happen. Captain Spartan 04 says, I wish there was a blender to make for these quarterbacks so I could mix them all together and make the perfect QB. You can say that about any draft, really. It's hard to really be sold on any one of these particular quarterbacks just because of all of the different traits that they have or some of the things they may be lacking. Yeah, it'd be nice to put them together, but that's not the case. Reese says, hope like hell the Saints don't get Christian McCaffrey, Lou. That would be a great landing destination for him because we've seen what they've done with guys like, to me, he's like a Reginald Bush clone. He's got that kind of skill set. And remember how successful Reginald Bush was with the Saints early on in his career as a punt returner and them throwing him the football out of the backfield. You know how you knew that they would have success with a guy like Darren Sproles when they were able to get him from San Diego. If they got their hands on McCaffrey, if the Patriots got their hands on McCaffrey, teams like that would know how to utilize him, that would be scary for a lot of teams. And I know why specifically you don't want him to end up in New Orleans. You don't want to have to deal with that 2 times a year. So, yeah, that would be scary indeed. Andrew Shirley says, on the NFL Network, they said that a bold prediction 4 running backs will go in the first round. Is that possible? I already told you I think 4 running backs are going in the first round. All right, now I've been talking about them during this process, and I did if you haven't already checked it out, please go and check out the Draft Prospects 101 series. After this video has met its conclusion, I've done the running backs this week. I've got a couple more running backs coming down the pipeline to wrap this week up. But please check out those videos. I've done the quarterbacks as well, changed the format back to something I'm more comfortable with. And I told you that I think that we could have upwards of 4 running backs. We could even get freaky and have 5. I doubt it, though. I feel like for sure Fournette and Cook and McCaffrey are coming off the board. That's 3. I feel like Alvin Kamara is a first-round pick all day, every day. And I will bang the table. I will vouch for him as a first-round pick. And so there you have it. That's 4. And if some team was feeling ridiculously freaky, Joe Mixon is probably a first-round pick as well. That's 5. But I don't see anyone pulling the trigger on Joe Mixon in the first. Just too much scrutiny that's going to come with that selection in the first round. You're going to have some pushback in the second round, but it's less of a headache in the second round than it is the first round. And I don't think anyone's willing to put up with what's going to come their way if they make him a first-round pick. That being said, King of Cleveland says, why do people think Leonard Fournette is not a generational talent? I don't know. He's that kind of guy. Maybe because of him sitting out the bowl game. Maybe because he doesn't catch it out of the backfield. But Adrian Peterson didn't catch it out of the backfield coming out of OU. And I look at him as an Adrian Peterson type. So I don't know. I don't know why. Stop asking. It is what it is. But I think he's a generational talent. I think he's that kind of guy. If he's mentally engaged, I think he's one of the best natural, pure running backs in this draft class. Should the Browns, and this is from RG3 hashtag, says, should the Browns draft Watson with their second first-round pick? We've heard that they're enamored with Trubisky. Trubisky's a Cleveland boy. They want to bring him home. We've heard all of those things. I don't know what they're going to do. I think what Hugh Jackson wants to do, I think Watson fits a little bit better. But after the whole Robert Griffin III experiment went awry there, I don't know if he wants to deal with another mobile quarterback. I think he might want to go with a guy that's more of a pocket passer, so we'll see what happens there. J32J Lock says, any thoughts about the Raiders moving to Vegas? Sure, I'll give you a little quick tidbit there. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but I'm not a huge fan of them moving to Vegas, of all places. It's just so much temptation there. So many things could go awry in Vegas. They needed to go somewhere. There wasn't enough funding. They needed a new stadium. They needed change, and it just wasn't enough resources in Oakland to handle an NFL franchise at this current moment. So they needed to relocate. Is Vegas the right place? There's a lot of expansion there, and there's a lot of opportunities, and that's why the older owners voted 31-1 to send them there, because they see the money. From a monetary standpoint, it's a really good move for the league. It's a really good move for the Raiders, but long term, I don't know if it's the best move for them. I could see a lot of players getting into some trouble there, but we'll see what happens with the Raiders moving to Vegas. It's just another one of these franchises where you're just like, you hate to see so much history and so many fans left behind. That's really unfortunate. So like San Diego, I didn't have a problem with the Rams moving from St. Louis to L.A. because St. Louis to me is a baseball town. They're not a football town. But it hurts me when I see the Chargers leave San Diego. That's a football town. That's a historic football situation. There's so many things have transpired over the years there. Same with the Raiders, even though they went back and forth from L.A. to Oakland. I would have loved to have seen the Raiders instead of the Chargers go to L.A. because there's already a fan base there. But, it is what it is. At the end of the day, the Raiders, they needed to go somewhere. It ended up being Vegas. Ben Glaffer says, I was talking about my Dolphins as a team that were, okay, so the Dolphins and Malik McDowell, that could be a good match there. We'll see what happens. They definitely need some interior help. The whole Super Mario thing didn't work out last season, and so they could be looking for some help inside in the trenches, and he would fit what they're trying to do. So we'll see what happens. Malik McDowell is on a lot of teams' radar as a first-round pick. He's going off the board in the first round. Whether you like him as a player or you don't like him, you don't like his motor or whatever the case, he's coming off the board in the first round. It's just a matter of where. Not when, but where is he going to go? Craig Smith says, how do you feel about Justin Evans? I feel my Bolts can get him in the third to play a single high free safety in Gus Bradley's scheme. No need to use number 7 pick on a safety in a class this deep. I got to watch Justin Evans some more. You're talking about the safety out of Virginia Tech. I got to watch him some more. I'm intrigued by his range, and his size. So I got to go watch him some more. I saw a little bit of him at the Combine. I want to watch some more of him before I give you an assessment. But he may be able to play some center field. They're so, and I agree with you. That's the one thing I can say right now. The safety, the defensive back class in general, corners and safeties, so deep. It's so rich with so many talented, long, athletic football players that I don't think you need to invest on, unless you're getting one of the elites, unless you're getting Hooker or you're getting my man out of LSU, Adams. Unless you're getting one of those guys, Adams or Hooker, to me, there's no reason to go reaching for a safety early on in this draft. There's so many guys that, that have some talent, that have size, that have athleticism, that have ability. I don't know if you need to go reaching. So I mean, maybe a guy like Justin Evans is a perfect pickup. You know what I mean? Bossaholic says, your thoughts on the Redskins if they draft Mixon in the third? I wouldn't have a problem with them drafting Joe Mixon. I really wouldn't. And I'm going to talk about Mixon. He'll be the guy that I break down tomorrow on the draft prospects 101 series. So be on the lookout for that. But I wouldn't have a problem with it at all. At all. And I honestly don't think he's going to be around in the third round. I don't. I think someone's going to take him in the second. Smoke says, how do you feel about Marcus Williams? I like his range a lot. He's another one of these tall, long, rangy safeties. I believe Marcus Williams is the safety out of Utah. This draft is loaded with safeties. And I'm telling you, I haven't seen this many safeties with the size and the range and the athleticism that these guys possess. I don't know if I've ever seen this many of them at once. Miami has a safety as well that can hit as a physical guy, but that can also add, I think he had like 7 picks last year. There's so many safeties in this draft. It is utterly ridiculous. Michigan State's got a guy that is really on nobody's radar, Nicholson. He's like 6'2". He ran a sub 4.5. He's like a 4.4 flat guy. It's like, this is ridiculous. So there's so many safeties in this draft. I mean, we can go through them all, but Marcus Williams is another one. And so this draft is loaded. Andrew Shirley says, Kamara looking good. Honestly, would feel good if the Niners picking him, begging at the beginning of the second. Is that crazy? No, and especially with your guy not being able to stay healthy. I absolutely love Carlos Hyde, but he's never healthy. And I think they would make an excellent 1-2 punch if you could. And maybe that's what Carlos Hyde really needs, because I'm not a fan of the guy you guys drafted last year out of South Carolina. He's okay, but he's not a difference maker to me. Kamara is absolutely a difference maker, but the problem is I don't think he's going to be around for your Niners in the second round. That's how much I think of him. I don't see Alvin Kamara getting out of the first round. He's too talented. He brings too much to the table. He's got too much value. He's got too much upside. I just don't see him sneaking into the second round. But if you could get your hands on him in the second round, I think that'd be a great pickup, an awesome pickup for the San Francisco 49ers. So as we continue on with some of your comments, Andrew Shirley says, what do you think of Solomon Thomas as a tweener for a 4-3? I love Solomon Thomas. He's another one of these guys that I am just absolutely head over heels for in this draft. He's a stud. And whether you ask him to stand up in a 3-4, which I think would be a mistake, I think he's more of a 4-3 defensive end that can kick inside in nickel packages and rush like they used him at Stanford. He's put on some weight. This guy's a beast. I think he's more naturally suited to play in a 4-3 than a 3-4, but I think he's versatile enough to play in a 3-4 if you ask him to, but I think you'd be wasting a lot of his talents. I think he's more of a 4-down set guy. I think he is much more comfortable as a base 4-3 end, more so than a 3-4 based 5-tech in a 3-4 defense. So I'd love him in a 4-3 defense as a guy that can interchange between defensive tackle and defensive end. I think this guy's a winner. I think this guy's a high energy, high motor guy, and I think he's talented above all else, which is not what you normally hear out of a defensive player out of Stanford. You know, Trent Murphy had like 18 sacks like 3-4 years ago when he came out. Redskins picked him in the second round. No one saw second round talent out of Trent Murphy, but this guy has it. You know, and I'm a big Solomon Thomas. He's coming off the board in the first 5 picks. I don't see how he lasts past, the 5th pick in the draft. I think that much of Solomon Thomas, and if he gets past 5, he's not getting past the top 10 picks. He's not coming out of the top 10. So, Rarely even says, Bucks are interested in Marlon Mack. I'll pass, Lou. He's another Charles Sims. I like Marlon Mack. I actually wanted to break him down. I'm not going to get to him because the guy got to move on to another position, but I actually like Marlon Mack, but I think he's comparable to Charles Sims. I actually like him better than Charles Sims. I think Charles Sims is a really choppy runner. He doesn't take big steps. He's, to me, not a fluid athlete as Charles Sims. He's an athlete, but he's not fluid. Everything he does seems mechanical to me. Whereas with Marlon Mack, he's very fluid, and he takes big steps, and he eats up a lot of ground. And technically, Charles Sims is faster than him, but I think on game day, I'd take Marlon Mack over him. But in any event, you're comfortable with Charles Sims, there's no need to go that route. But to me, they are comparable backs. They don't complement one another, so I wouldn't advise you to go that route either. I agree with you. Jonathan Lynch says, what do you think of Hassan Reddick going to the Redskins? I'd love it. A guy that could come in right away, upgrade our linebacker position, a guy that could come in, get after the quarterback. He's an excellent blitzer, extremely athletic. We saw that at the Combine. I would absolutely love that pick. And I told you, I want the Redskins to go defense in the first round. They did some things in free agency defensively, none of which I think are game changers. We need a game-changing defensive football player, and we need it in the first round of this draft. I've been hearing nothing but running back over and over and over again for the Redskins, which is fine. But I want to hear defense. We didn't do it last year. I want to do it this year. I'm not blown away by the moves made in the offseason thus far, and I'll do a video about that down the road. But bottom line is, Hassan Reddick would fit like hand in glove with the Redskins with one of their needs. They need a guy in the front seven that can change the game. To me, he would be that kind of player. Moving on, let's see. RG3 hashtag smoking at 3 says, every safety that drafted with the 5th pick had some bad happen to them. Remember, I don't know. I think the only guy that comes to mind is Sean Taylor. So I don't know. Was LaRon Landry the 5th overall pick? I don't remember. In any event, Bossaholic says people are high on Hooker because OSU and his picks. I saw his angles in the run game. It made me throw up. Adams is better all around. I agree. I think Adams is the better all around safety. I think Hooker is more of a free safety. I don't think he's an interchangeable safety. He's not a guy you want in the run game. He's not a great tackler. He's more of a corner playing safety is what Hooker is. And that range that he has makes people think about a guy like Ed Reed. And I'm not comparing him to Ed Reed. Ed Reed is one of the greatest safeties we've ever seen. First ballot Hall of Famer. But Hooker has that kind of range. He can make plays on the football that blow you away, that's breathtaking. And I think people are going to fall in love with that. And if you have a guy that you're comfortable with in the box and you're just looking for a free safety to come in and range sideline to sideline, then Hooker's your guy. But if you're looking for an interchangeable safety, and I talk about safeties in this league and how you need to be interchangeable, I don't think that Hooker's the guy you're looking for. If you're looking for a guy that can come down, be a strong, and then drop 30 yards away and be a free, all in the same breath, he's not that guy. You don't want him as your last line of defense. He's not that kind of safety. If it's him and the ball carrier and he's your last line of defense, good luck with that, because he's not that kind of guy. Whereas with Jamal Adams, he's a guy that I think he can make plays on the football. He's athletic enough to do so, but it also is physical, is a guy that I trust as the last line of defense to get someone down on the ground, is equally as aggressive in the box as he is 30 yards away, going and tracking a guy going after the football and dislodging him and separating him from football. I'm a Jamal Adams guy, but make no mistake about it, Malik Hooker is extremely talented, and I think you can't go wrong with either one. It just depends on what you're going to ask each of them to do. All right, moving along. Let's see how much time we have left. We've got 10 minutes left, so I'm going to continue to get as many questions, and then I'll save the last 5 minutes, and I'll just talk about the running back position quickly, and then we'll get out of here. Andrew Shirley says, why isn't anyone talking about Pumphrey? He had a hell of a season last year because he's like 5'8", and his size, he's like 175, like 180, and he's like 5'8". Like there's only so much you can do with a guy that size. He's going to get drafted by someone because he's a talented guy. It's just you're not going to hear his name mentioned very often because this is a running back draft class that is loaded with guys that are talented. I mean, we could sit here and run off about 7 running backs before you even start talking about, guys in the 3rd and 4th and the 5th round. I mean, we were just talking Marlon Mack. That's not a name you're hearing very often, but that's a talented guy that's probably going to come off the board in the 2nd round. I mean, we talked about the big 4. I call them the big 4 in Fournette, Cook, McCaffrey, and Kamara. But then you've got guys like Mixon. You've got a guy like Foreman out of Texas. You got Marlon Mack out of South Florida. There's so many backs in this draft. I'm a big Joe Williams guy out of Utah. There's so many backs in this draft. It's ridiculous. So a guy like Donnell Pumphrey is going to get pushed way down in the conversation before you even get to a guy like him. So yeah, he had a hell of a collegiate career, let alone last year. His whole body of work is ridiculous, but you're not going to hear his name because he's a really small guy. But that's a chip that he needs to put on his shoulder and help him be the best player that he could be at the next level. Andrew Kim says, can Marlon Humphrey or Quincy Wilson convert to safety if corner doesn't work out? I don't know. I think people like Quincy Wilson as a corner, but that's you could ask that about anybody. If you draft a guy in, let's say, the second round, you get your hands on him and he's just not working out at corner, you might put him at safety. You can say that about anybody. And with the amount of size, which is just ridiculous in this draft, you can say that about a lot of players. I mean, look at Obi Melifonwu out of UConn. I mean, look at that guy. He's a freak. 6'4", 215, chiseled. I mean, there's not an ounce of fat on that guy. He's running a 4.4 flat, and he's a safety. What if a team says, look, we want to try you at corner? Okay? Again, what are we talking about here? There's so many of these guys in this draft. We'll see. Quincy Wilson would definitely fit but I think he's a big corner. You want these guys to work at corner first because of how many of these big receivers are in the league now. You're talking Ravens. You got A.J. Green. It's A.J. Green. You got A.J. Green in your division. You got to contend with that guy 2 times a year. You want to be able to combat that kind of size with a cornerback with size. So a guy like Quincy Wilson that's 6'1", 6 feet, 6'1", with some size, with some weight on him. He's a 205-pound corner. You want that kind of guy lining up against an A.J. Green because he can go up and make plays on the football. So, these teams are going to do everything in their power to get these guys to work out at corner first. And if it doesn't, then that's when you start moving positions and seeing where these guys can fit. Isaac Chavez says, in the perfect world, would you rather see the Redskins draft Hassan Reddick or Reuben Foster at 17? I don't expect Reuben Foster to get out of the top 10. He's not getting past Cincinnati, if you ask me. So I'm not even going to allow myself to think that way. But if the two were on the board, I would probably rather take Reuben Foster, even though, Hassan Reddick is really growing on me. And I know he's not a head case. And I don't know if you guys heard or not, but there was a report out there. And again, you don't really know what to believe this time of the year. I already told you, believe half of what you see, none of what you hear, even if it's backed by me, your man, Louie T. But I was hearing that Reuben Foster was having trouble on the whiteboard. Teams were asking him to go up there, and they were giving him situations and asking him what his responsibility would be and what the call would be. And he was struggling. And he said, look, man, I'm not a whiteboard guy. You know what I mean? Some people learn visually. Some people can go out and do things. I'm just not a guy that is great at the X's and O's. He says, but I'm working on it. Translation, he's not good with the X's and O's. He's a guy that might freelance, that might be out of position, that because he's athletic can make up for being out of position sometimes, but he's going to blow some coverages. He's going to make some mistakes, and that's scary. So I'm starting to lean towards Hassan Reddick, but I don't expect Reuben Foster to be there at 10 anyway. And he's such an athlete. If he's having trouble with the X's and O's, he's one of those guys you say, hey, Reuben, look at me. You go that way fast. No questions asked. So we'll see what happens there. But we're down to our final couple minutes. So I thank everybody for your comments. I want to jump into some running back talk before we move on and get out of here. This running back class is, to me, loaded. And I think the offensive side of the football is really talented. Tight end is a really big position this year. Running back is really talented. I think these quarterbacks are talented in their own right. So I'm really anxious to see what happens with those positions. But running back in particular, I think we could see, and this has been a position that's been devalued over the last decade. It's turned into a passing league. You're seeing teams forego the running game and throw it 45, 50 times. And I think there's something to be said about teams that can still run the football. We saw this past year where a lot of the games all of the games in the NFC were played inside. So, we always say, oh, you got to have a running game when it gets cold in December and in January. Well, what happens when you're playing the Falcons or you're playing the Cowboys? You're playing inside, okay? You don't have to be able to run the football. And so we're not seeing the running game be as prevalent, but I think we've got a crop of running backs that can bring the running game back and help bring it back to the forefront. We saw Ezekiel Elliott. We saw what the Bears rookie Jourdan did out there in Chicago. If you get the right guy and you put him in the right system, Jordan Howard last year for the Bears, you can do some things. And so these running backs, the big four, as I've dubbed them, in Fournette, Cook, McCaffrey, Kamara, and even some of the guys that I think will be left over after the first round is done, in a Mixon or even a Foreman, if you like that, if that's your flavor. It's not mine, but if that's your flavor, knock yourself out. Or Marlon Mack. I think there are some backs in this draft that can get it done at a very high level. And some teams are going to be really fortunate to get their hands on these guys. And they're going to be game changers. Dalvin Cook, to me, is an absolute stud. Kamara is an absolute beast. And I think he's got the chance to be the best back when it's all said and done in this draft class when we look back 4 or 5 years down the road. And again, if you haven't checked out those videos, I've already done videos on the big four. That would be Kamara. That would be McCaffrey. That would be Cook. That would be Fournette. I've got a couple more running back videos to come, so keep your eyes peeled for those. But this is a loaded draft. And one of the better backs in Joe Mixon, because of his off-the-field issues, not going to go in the first round. Someone's going to get themselves a steal. This guy's not an animal. Everyone's going to make him out to be. He made a mistake. It was a big and stupid and bad mistake. But he deserves a second chance. He's a young man, all right? Let's hope that this is not something that he repeats. And look, this guy's a talented football player. There's no doubt about it. And I fully expect someone to pull the trigger on him. And I think it's going to be the Detroit Lions. I've heard their general manager talk. And he said, look, man, this guy should have been at the combine. He's talented. He's one of the best 330 players in the nation. He should have been at the combine. We should have been able to vet him. We should have been able to talk to him. He should have been working out. He should have been there. And he's right. And some people gave him some flack and some pushback. For what? Man, speaking truth. And that also lets me know he's interested. And the Lions could use a back like Joe Mixon in their offense. They've got a ton of backs, but no one like Joe Mixon. Would not be shocked if the Lions pulled the trigger on him. If he's there, someone else might pull the trigger on him before then. But I don't see any team pulling the trigger on Joe Mixon in the first round. But that's going to do it for me. My time is up. I thank everyone out for coming out and joining me tonight. And we're going to do this every Wednesday. And I'll try to be a little bit earlier with this, but, schedule's all over the place. So in any event, man, if it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here on the Louie T Network. I thank you guys for joining me here in the lab room, in the draft room, episode number 2. I'll see you guys next time. If you haven't done so, check out the videos on the channel. All of the Draft Prospect 101 series has been riveting thus far, and I'm going to continue to churn out the content. And check out some of the other guys that's doing draft work, whether it's my man over on Sports Entertainment. Check out all of the different channels on YouTube, man. These guys are putting out some great content on YouTube. So go check out what they're doing. They're putting out mock drafts like crazy. Go check that stuff out, man. Eat it all up, man. It's a fun time of year, man. Let's enjoy it. So I'll see you guys next week. Have a good one.